Okay, folks, we're not quite getting Judaism, are we? Just...
Shema.
Yep, Shema, just listen. It's the most important prayer for Jews.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And as for you, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. Now the first word of the Shema is hear, or listen, which in Hebrew is pronounced Shema.
The Jews believe in just one God, and they believe he's all-powerful, all-knowing, and everywhere. And the three words for that are omnipotent, potent, think of omnipotent, potent, meaning powerful, omnipresent, meaning everywhere, think of God being present everywhere, and omniscient, well, that's the last one, the odd one out, and that's all-knowing. Now, they believe that God created the earth, as do Jews and Muslims, and you have two kinds of Jews. You have the Orthodox Jews, they're the strict Jews, and then you have the
Reform Jews don't practice with the same rigors of more orthodox forms of Judaism.
Reform Jews, they are more relaxed. Think of R for reform, R for relaxed, okay? So you have those two Jews. The Orthodox Jews tend to think that God created the earth as it says in the Bible, so roughly 6,000 years ago and over a period of 6 days. Whereas the Reform Jews and the other Jews would think, well, okay, God did create the earth, but not necessarily in 6 days, and obviously much earlier than 6,000 years ago. And the Jews believe that God has created us with free will, so we can choose right or wrong. So who created wrong? Who created evil? They believe God created evil. Can you believe that? They believe that God has created everything and he needs to create evil so that we can pick and choose like this. Pick and choose right from wrong, good or evil. And so it's necessary. Let's have a look what else it says over here. God is a... Yes, of course he's a judge, because he's the maker of all things, and he's all-powerful, all-knowing, and everywhere. So he's the judge and the lawgiver, so he does both. Think of the most famous laws that the Jews have. Ten Commandments. That's it. And from those 10 Commandments, which God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai, those laws grew, and they've become 613 mizvot, or commandments or rules for the Jews to live by. It gives them guidelines. It shows them how to use their free will. Should they follow the laws and do what is right and please God and live in harmony with other people? For example, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't murder. You may want to murder me. But if you don't do those things, it leads to harmony. That's why God gave us those rules in the 10 Commandments. And there are 6 of them relating to humanity. So don't kill, don't be jealous, don't lie. You look up the rest. Because we're rubbing shoulders with each other all the time. So we need those laws to keep us at peace with each other and in harmony. And then the other 4 laws in the commandments relate to our relationship with God. So don't be saying, oh my God, and look at all the American movies. That's taking God's name in vain.
Use the name of God only with respect.
Only worship the Lord your God. Don't be worshipping your money or drugs or anything else. God realizes that if we keep all those commandments, we'll be at peace with him, we'll be at peace with our neighbors, and we'll have a good life, we'll have a happy life. So he is a judge, so he judges to see, are we living by those laws? And he judges us twice. Once Rosh Hashanah, which is a Jewish New Year.
Everyone needs a new beginning. New Year's for me and you. This year you'll light up your world like nobody else. Go on and lift up your life to another realm. Bring out the ultimate you for show and tell. The shofar blows. This procession is beautiful.
God looks to see how have we lived the year so far, and then obviously when we die. Of course, when we die, God is going to judge us whether we go to heaven or hell. And they've no fixed ideas about heaven or hell. Jews tend to think that the present is the most important, the here and now, so they focus on that. But some Jews, very few Jews, believe that the body and soul will rise again after death. Others are not so sure, but they believe obviously if you've lived a good life, you're in a good relationship with God, you go either to heaven or hell. And let's have a look what else it says. Yes, God's presence obviously is everywhere. And they believe that God was present in early Judaism in the Ark of the Covenant. It was like a little tent that they carried around with them in the wilderness when they were in the desert, when they'd left Egypt and they were going to Israel. But also that they believed he was present in the Jewish temple, the massive Jewish temple that they had. God was present there. Okay, the role of the Messiah. What is the Messiah? The Messiah is also the Christ. Messiah in Hebrew, Christ in Greek, and it means anointed one or chosen one. He's been chosen by God. And a number of Jews believe that the Messiah will be sent by God to bring peace, to bring harmony, to lead his people, and you bring world peace, like all the beauty queens say, world peace. And they believe that there will be kindness. What else do they say about the Messiah? Oh yes, the Orthodox Jews. Now get this, the Orthodox Jews, that there is a potential Messiah born in every generation. So you could be sitting next to a potential Messiah. And they believe when the time is right, let's have a look over here, and if the Jews are ready for it, God will reveal that Messiah and he'll bring in an age of peace for the whole world. Now, the promised land. What is the promised land? The Jews today would call that Israel, and they believe that God promised this land to Abraham thousands of years ago. And just watch this.
God spoke to a man named Abraham, telling him to leave his home in Mesopotamia and take his family on a long journey west to a land called Canaan. So in the year 2000 BC, Abraham, following God's wishes, left his home. God promised to lead Abraham to Canaan, and that in time it would turn into a mighty nation.
So God makes a covenant, that's an agreement between him and Abraham has to put his trust in God. His part of the agreement is that he's going to trust God and move to a place where God sends him. And God's part of the agreement is that he's going to bless Abraham with a son and land, and from there will grow a great nation, and we're all part of that nation. But God promised him the land, so the Jews believe that that is their land. Right, I took a short break there. We're talking about the covenant, the agreement between God and Abraham. God also made a covenant with Moses much later on the mountain of Sinai, when he led Moses and the Israelites out of Egypt. Remember, they were there in slavery and they crossed the Red Sea in the parting of the waters. Remember, Pharaoh did not want to let the Israelites go because they were cheap labor for him. So God sent 10 plagues, including boils and locusts and frogs. I can tell you he was hopping mad with that one. But the last plague was the killing of the firstborn of the Egyptians, and that was known as the Jews call that the Passover, because the angel of death passed over the Jews because they painted the blood of the lamb on their doors. That's for another video. And the Jews also passed over from slavery in Egypt to freedom in Israel. But on the way they stopped at Mount Sinai. Moses was given the 10 Commandments. That was a covenant. God was saying, look, if you and the Jewish people keep these 10 Commandments, I will look after you. So two parts of the agreement. a covenant. And the Ten Commandments essentially are there to create peace amongst the Jewish people, so they live at peace with each other, no killing, no lying, no stealing, no being jealous, and also a good relationship with God, keeping the Sabbath day holy and loving God. And the three key principles in Judaism, and you can see that partly in the Ten Commandments, are these.
When you're fair, people enjoy the game. The world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race.
Justice, healing the world, and being kind to others. What more could you ask for? Look, think carefully. What is justice? You're putting things right. You're making sure that people are treated fairly. You look after the poor people. Healing the world, you look after the environment. You look for those areas where there are difficulties and you see what you can do to make things better. It says tip over here, let's have a look. How to sustain the world. What can you do to make sure the world can keep going without using up all the resources? And then being kind to others. That doesn't take too much, does it? Giving people dignity. We give people dignity because life is sacred. The Jews believe in the sanctity of life. Sanctity meaning sacred, meaning holy. So life is holy. Why is it holy? Of course, it's holy, quite obviously, because God has given us life. And that means that we've got to look after our lives. We protect our lives. We treat it with care, with respect. God has given us our lives. That means only God can take life, not us. So when you look at issues like euthanasia, ending someone's life, maybe we shouldn't be, because if you believe in the sanctity of life, only God has a right to take life, not us. And it means also that we can break rules. So the Jews will break the rule not to work on the Sabbath by driving someone to hospital if it's an emergency to save their life, because life is sacred. So the belief in the sanctity of life is all about protecting life, looking after it, even if the Jews have to break a rule now and again. And the last thing, free will. God has given us free will because He loves us. Okay, so you think of the Garden of Eden, the tree in the garden. There's nothing magical about the tree in the garden. It represented choice. Adam and Eve could either live in good relationship with God or say, no, actually, God, you go your way, we'll go our way via the tree, we'll eat the fruit, we'll do what we want, but then you live with the consequences, don't you? And that's not great. And the Mizvot are there to guide us with our free will, so they're not going all over the place, but that we are going in the right direction towards God in peace and harmony with everyone else. Now look, that was very, very quick. But you do need to read your notes, okay? And you do need to learn a few quotes. So please do that, but you can use this as an overall summary.